Hi everyone. Today I'm going to try to break down something I've taken months to learn under just 15 minutes. So today I'm going to try to tackle a very important topic that most people discuss about in astrology, that's being Saturn retrograde. We'll be understanding both Saturn retrograde from a birth chart analysis and along with also yearly analysis. Please do note I do not take up astrology coaching and consultation. This is just something I'm sharing with all of you for you guys to explore more on your own as well. These are just fundamental concepts of astrology that we'll be looking into. But saying that, like I said, when we talk about Saturn, Saturn is a planet where we kind of deal or look into in a very negative shade. But actually, when you see Saturn as a planet, and when we see the attributes and the personality traits or characteristics of Saturn, Saturn is actually a dean or a principal who's sitting there trying to help you get a better life, right? And when it's associated with a retrograde, either being in a birth chart. So if you guys do want to first understand birth chart, what I would suggest is if you want to download a D1 chart or a Lagna chart from anywhere, you have multiple places that you can do online. And on any of the planets, I mean, in any of the charts, when you see Saturn with an R written on it, that means that particular Saturn in your Lagna is in a retrograde form. Okay. So in these situations, we say it as a birth chart retrograde planet of Saturn. When we talk about yearly as well, once every year, roughly for about 4.5 years, we can see Saturn that goes retrograde. So what actually happens? Let me break down the phenomenon for you. We have the sun, we have Mercury, Mars, Venus, and etc. till Saturn, and all of these planet revolves around the sun, right? So what actually happens is Saturn being comparatively way farther to other planets, the rotation time it takes to complete one revolution is much longer, right? So it's comparatively a slower moving planet compared to other planets. In this condition, what happens? Saturn, when it goes into retrograde, when you're talking about yearly as well, it looks like it's going backwards, but it's not actually going backwards, but it looks like it. So that's why we say in astrology that yearly wise, whenever Saturn moves into retrograde, it feels like all the attributes of Saturn tend to move backwards. So your repercussions or whatever you're dealing with will be the exact opposite of it. Okay. Even in your birth chart, wherever Saturn is located or whichever house or Rashi is located in and it's in retrograde, the aspects of it will either be more jarred or it'll be opposite of what can be expected of it. So just to give you an example, when we talk about Saturn, Saturn is a planet of karma, right? It's a related of karmic cycles. It's a relationship, it's related to the teacher, fundamentally the teacher. Okay, it deals with all the deeds that you have done, you're doing, and that you will do, and how each of these associations are kept into place. So just to give you a very simple example, when we talk about it, either if you have a Saturn retrograde or if you're going through your yearly Saturn and retrograde, one thing is for sure, if you have enemies that have tried to belittle you, who have done harm to you or anything at all, this will be the phases where they will reap the the bad karmic deeds that they have done, keeping in mind that you have done no reaction to this, because Saturn is the one who's like a judge who's going to give everybody what they've invested in, right? And if you're a student, for years of work that you've done, finally you go give your exam during this period, the chances are the reaping the rewards of it are going to be beneficial is in this particular phase. Along with that, patience is something that you'll require during these phases, especially for those of you with a birth chart or having a combination of your birth chart retrograde along with your yearly retrograde, because this is the time that's going to be testing, because the time for you is going to be very slow. Either you're going to lack a lot of enthusiasm, you're going to feel very lazy, or all the things that you do during this period might seem very bored, very dull, just you're doing the things for the sake of it. If not that, you might experience some ways of lags, or somewhere it's just not moving forward, you're going to feel very low of energy. All of these are some of the things that you can see. Apart from that, if it's very negatively placed, one thing that you can actually see yourself having or going through is a loss of things, either loss of money if that's a repetitive cycle that's going on because you have some lesson to learn about it, or if you're in a partnership, be it relationship, personal or professional, you might start having issues with that person. And this is the where Saturn is actually trying to tell you not to put you down, but to actually sit and help you reflect what has happened and what you need to do in the future. Just giving you an example, imagine you get into a relationship with someone, the person is showing you every possible red flag things that is there. Probably the person is probably cheating on you, is disrespecting you, is crossing boundaries, etc., etc. And you're just, taking all the abuse, all the things, and you keep looking and looking and looking. This is the phase where it's going to be so intense that you no longer can bear with what the other person is putting you through. And more than reaction, this is more of reflection. You're going to sit down and say, is this really worth investing in this guy? And more than, sitting and arguing with him, you'll sit down, you'll sit peacefully, you'll see the pros and the cons, and you'll try to understand and navigate how to move further in this relationship. Either if you want to break up with the person, you might choose to do it, or if you think that this relationship can stand and it's not that much, you might choose couples therapy to go through it. So there are multiple ways of how you approach it, but you'll come to an understanding of how to deal with that person. This is what actually, retrograde deals with. And when we look into Saturn retrograde from a birth chart analysis, especially when Saturn sits in your first house deals with the sense of self. Here, the person is going through extreme circumstances, so that person actually develops a very strong sense of self. And these might be people who build up years and years and years of legacy that they have, because when a person knows what they want, who they are, and how they're going to portray themselves, half of your work is done. What we call as branding is set. Marketing is how you go about doing it, but branding of you, the brand that you build, that you are an identity of yourself, is what Saturn builds. That's why people who have Saturn in the first house, they build very slow, but when they build a huge legacy. Like, you know even legacy after that, that's the kind of thing intensity they come with. Especially even with retrograde, the hit is hard, the intensity is hard. So this is why they build better. It doesn't always have to have a bad effect, but the degree of which it's sitting in also has to be looked into. But yeah, this is one of the major aspects of it. And one thing again, if you have Saturn probably retrograding in your fourth house is basically your family, right? You have relationships, family life. You might have major hits sitting in your family, like your parents, your wife, your children, all of that. More than children, I would say family, like parents and your wife or something like that. More than wife, I would actually put it down together. Your family being your parents, so your siblings and all of those aspects would be completely governed by this. Siblings again would probably go to your third house, but fourth again, family wise, whatever you kind of that would be the major part of it. So those aspects would be brought into light, and you'll have to work around that as well. So Saturn retrograding in all of these planets. The reason why I'm specifying this is not all parents are good, and every parent that is there is trying their best to kind of provide a life for their children with the best they know about the world, right? It's not that they know everything. They're also experimenting with life. They're also figuring out life through the times. As humans, people do make mistakes, people don't do mistakes, people still navigating. But there are issues where people or children are neglected because of the parents, because they're unable to identify what they want, and they're trying to give the best of what the society thinks that they deserve. And this is the point where you can see kind of ripples between the relationship between parents and the children, or understanding or lack of understanding between parents and children, and all of these things. So because of this, one of the major aspect that you can actually understand over here is the children or the parents might be put into a reflection phase during this time. Just to give you an example, imagine there's a set of parents and they have two toddlers, or they have a set of parents and they're two teenagers. The teenagers, because of the isolation, the neglection, and all of that, they might start building those kind of relationships, or those relationships that they can give them the validation outside of them. They might get into wrong abuse, or wrong substance abuse and all of that. And there might be a point where the child might get caught because of the wrong substance abuse, and this is the time where the parents actually understand and reflect of what they've done. It's not one day of work, it's not 2 days of work, it's years of neglect, years of not giving you people validation, years of not giving them the affection, that they've gone looked for somewhere else, and this is the repercussions of what they deal with. This is the point where the parents start to realize and reflect of what has happened, right? So this is something that retrograde Saturn can actually bring about yearly or through birth charts. Along with that, there might be issues where, if imagine you have certain, if again fourth house has a Saturn retrograde, the child maybe between the toddler years or something is there, and the parents are working. I'm not telling it's wrong working. I think it's very important for both the partners to work. But sometimes they might neglect the child very much, that they only treat the child like a trophy in front of the society, where the child is completely detached from the parenting. There might be times when the child might not even be able to recognize or kind of understand where the parents are coming from, rather than coming from emotional tone. So detachment and narcissism building in these children are maximum. So over a period of time, they might realize they've actually raised narcissistic children. So these are some things that you might be dealing with. Again, it's not always the same case. It depends on everybody's journey, what they're learning, the health conditions, the mental conditions, the environments that they're growing up in. All of these play a very important role, so you'll have to look into those aspects. But like I said, Saturn is a planet that is going to bring everything in the dark, not more, mostly not to find solutions but to reflect, so that these reflections that you do can bring about solid considerations during your when you're actually trying to find a solution. It's completely about reflection and closing karmic loops. So this is something that you'll have to know. One other thing that I would probably suggest is, if people are going through repeated karmic loops and you're not making any differences, every time it comes, the same issues are going to keep coming back, like on loop as well. Unless and until you solve a situation, you're never going to get out of it, because eventually, no matter what remedy you do or whatever people says, you're human. You have very psychological needs, you have survival needs, and if these are not met and these are not things, somewhere your own instigating mind is going to bring you to a point where you have to reflect. So again, like I said, if you're going through experiences and if it's Saturn retrograde, sit with it, reflect on what is happening, both your side and the other person's side. See what is the best way to navigate through, and then think about it, how to go forward. Don't make impulsive judgments, or don't make impulsive decisions. Take time, try to sort it out, and then see how best it is. But like I said, what the kind of people that who actually I have seen, okay, they use astrology or abuse astrology more than actually understanding it. And that's the worst part that you can see. Any subject that is there, you have to know this is just the potential that it shows in your charts. The actual intensity is how you deal with it. You're dealing, because whatever you're doing is how it works, right? If you're going to look at it in a good way and try to work around it, you'll have a better future. If you don't, you'll not have a better one. So that's how it is. People abuse it so much that sometimes it's hard to even explain to people the actual logic of it. So just to give you an example, when I talked about Saturn, there are people who study for years to do what you say, these examinations, like engineering or architecture, or just finishing your 12th standard board exams. It's years of things that they've studied to actually clear it. Just because your birth chart says you have a potential of becoming a topper doesn't mean, unless and until you study, you're not going to get marks. No, you have to have equal amount of efforts from your side. Because if I just say, oh, it's written, and it's definitely not going to come. Only when you have enough amount of you've actually done the work, Saturn recognizes it and blesses you for it. It just doesn't mean that you're sitting there and you're going to get everything. So don't misuse it, don't abuse it, and don't use it just for the sake of it. I would suggest, whatever you do it with a good intention, and just leave it on whatever you believe in, and they will eventually do it. Because even if you say all these things, most of the times it doesn't work. So just know about that. But saying that, thank you so much, guys. It was wonderful explaining to you guys about Saturn retrograde today. Like you guys know, I do not take up astrology coaching and consultation. This is something I'm just sharing to help you guys understand more into the general topics of it. But I do take up Vastu and Feng Shui coaching and consultation. You can reach out to us with the contact details shared in the channel description, and we'll be able to help you out. So thank you so much, guys.